we're going to create a timeline that looks exactly like this one, and we're going to animate it as well. You can download this file, timeline start, from the resources of this video to follow along with me. We're going to start by recreating all the objects in this timeline, and then we're going to animate them. We're going to take a look at this timeline and figure out what kind of shapes we want and have a kind of a plan in our mind. Because a lot of the times, trust me, as PowerPoint users, you see designs everywhere. You see designs on a poster, you see it in an infograph, somewhere on the internet, and you want to use a similar design. So you need to quickly decide what kind of shapes you need and what kind of plan you have to create your animation or simply your graphic. So if we look at this timeline, we will notice that we have two trapezoid shapes, one for start, one for finish. We have circles. We have a big line we need to create, and all of these are shapes. We can create them by just using shapes. And we have these shapes here, that the rectangle shapes with those little triangles, just like callouts or dialog bubbles. We can also find these in the PowerPoint shapes. Actually, these are all the kinds of objects that we need. It's a very simple. Let's go ahead and try to create them on our own. We'll go to this blank slide, and I will start by inserting the shapes we need. I'm going to look for the trapezoid shape. It's right here in the block arrows. And double click inside and write start. We can copy the trapezoid over to the other side. And when we get to the other side, we can go to rotate and flip it vertically and call this finish. Now we need to add the line in the middle. So I'm going to insert a simple rectangle shape and make it go all the way across the slide. At this point, it's very useful if we open our selection pane and start naming things, because that will make it a lot easier when it comes to animation. So trust me, get into this habit from the beginning. Whenever you add something new to your slide, whether it's going to be 5 objects or 500 objects on one slide, just name them in a way that will make sense to you when you come back and try to animate them later. Because when we start to animate, if you have just rectangle 16 and pentagon 15 and circle 54, and all these things will not make sense, and it will take a lot more time to figure out which was what. So the first thing we need to do is to name all the objects we're adding to our slide. I'll go to the Home tab, and in the Drawing section, Arrange, Selection Pane, or you can go to Editing section and go to Select Selection Pane. Now in the Selection Pane, we can see that we have arrows, we have a rectangle 3. So as you can see, it doesn't make any sense. So we'll start by calling this rectangle, we'll call it the connector line, and arrow pentagon 2, that's the finish. And this one is the start. The selection pane, of course, is not only useful for that, it's also useful to change the stacking order very quickly, because as you can see, the line is blocking the start and finish, and this is not exactly what we want to do. We want the line to be beneath the start and finish, so that's very simple. We can choose the connector line from the selection pane and drag it under the start and finish, so that will make start and finish to come on top of it. I will choose all of them from here, and you can see now when I choose, sometimes you hit them all, sometimes you don't. So also the selection pane is very useful. If you want to choose multiple objects, just press Ctrl and click on the objects you want to choose. Now for the 3 objects I chose, I want to go to Format. I want to keep the color as it is, but I just want to get rid of the outline. Now what we need to do is to add our little circles that represent the 5 different steps along the timeline. So I'll go to the Insert, Shapes, to the oval shape. And remember, to draw a perfect circle using the oval shape, you need to press Shift. Maybe that's good enough. So we have this oval shape. Now I'm going to press Ctrl and duplicate it 4 more times. Now, all you need to do is to pick the first one and bring it as close as you want it to be from the start, and pick the next one and bring it as as close as you want it to be from the finish. Maybe a little bit like that. As you can see, as you move it along, those guides tell you that we have now exactly the same distance between start and the first circle, finish and the last circle. So you can see that visually, and sometimes it's a big time saver. In other times, you will have to go to arrange, and we will go to arrange anyway now because we want to distribute the space between those 5 circles evenly. And it seems that they are not perfectly aligned with each other, so we'll fix that as well. Now, what we need to do is we need to go to align and align those to the middle. As you can see, they're all perfectly aligned. And the next alignment we need to do is we need to distribute them horizontally. So now we know that they're perfectly spaced. We just need to name those. The oval 1 is going to be our number 1. Oval 2 is going to be our number 2. Oval 6 is going to be 3, 7, 4. And this last guy here is going to be our number 5. So now that we have everything we need on the timeline itself, now we need the boxes. We need to create text boxes and link them to each one of these because they're not going to all fit on one side or the other. So we're going to spread them 3 on top, two at the bottom, or vice versa. It's up to you. We'll go and try to find similar shapes. I'll go to insert shapes. And if you go all the way to callouts, you will see that we have a similar shape right here. It's a speech bubble. So if we take the speech bubble and we make it as big as this, I guess. Now remember, before you decide on how big it's going to be, just quickly see if it is going to fit, especially on the side you're going to put 3 across. So I'm going to quickly duplicate it, and that's going to be on, if we choose it to be the final one, it's going to be on 1, 3, and 5, and looks good. The size is good. So we have our 3 shapes for the top. We can create 2 shapes for the bottom. The beautiful thing about shapes that they are flexible. So we need this tip to be on top. All we need to do is simply take it and put it wherever we want it to be. So I'll go to this one, the second one as well. Maybe I want to put it on this side. And now we go to the second one here, 2. And this one is going to be for the 4th one. Now we have our shapes. Let's call it text 1. We don't want these to be blue, so we are going to click on all of them to choose them and then go to the shape fill. We'll choose a gray color for them and we'll delete the outlines. Now we need to put our text within. We don't want it to be in the middle. We want to have some more control on what we write here, but let's add some content to them. So when we start formatting the text box inside, we will know exactly what we're doing. So I will add a title here. I want to change the color to black for the text fill to be able to see it better. And here I will add the default lorem text. By the way, if you haven't heard of the lorem ipsum text before, it's the default placeholder text. So you just fill it in places where you want to mimic the. And by the way, if you haven't heard of the lorem ipsum text before, it's the default text that we use for placeholders. Especially if you're designing something, you don't want to add an actual text. You want to make sure that you have tested your design, and you will need a default text. So, and this is a very easy way to add it. You just add equal sign, lorem, and open close parentheses, and that's it. You just press enter, and you have this default text. We don't want to have all the text though. We just want to have part of it. Now we can go on and format the text in our shape to see how we want it to look like. So we can right click on the shape itself and go to Format Shape. We will choose Text Options. And the first thing we need to do is to go to this last text box tab. We have the vertical alignment to the middle and the text direction horizontal. That's what we wanted. Here, I guess it's important to keep the text, shrink the text to overflow. That means the more text we add, it's going to get smaller to fit inside this shape. If you don't want it to happen this way, you will need to say resize shape, but that's going to mess with your design. So it's either you do not auto fit and the text will overflow, and then the content creators will have to fix it in a way, or make sure the text is always within the boundaries of your shape and keep it on shrink text to on overflow. Now, I guess we will need to add a little bit more margin to the top and the bottom. So we don't want it to be so close. Maybe a little bit to the right and left as well. Yeah, that's much better. And that's it. If you're happy with this, let's just copy and paste it onto all the others. As you can see that we don't have the same format, so let's try and take the format from here and paint it inside. So let's try to go to the format painter and paint it inside this. We can still see that we have differences. First of all, everything is bold. We'll unbold that. But what about the margins? The margins are different. So we need to go back and fix all these things here. And to be honest, I did that on purpose to show you one of the common mistakes. It's not actually a mistake, it's just a common good practice to avoid this while working, because it saves you time in the long run. If you have in mind that you want to create a shape or a text box and you want to add special formatting to this text box, and then you want to duplicate the exact text box over and over, it's better to create only one, make all the formats you need, and then duplicate the shape with the text and formatting inside. That will save you a lot of time. And that's what we're going to do actually. We're going to click on those shapes, going to delete them. And now, because I know that this is the shape that I want, I can take that and duplicate it 2 times on the top and 2 times at the bottom. Now we're going to change this tip. Even duplicating the shape, deleting the old shapes, duplicating shape with the text will take a lot less. So if you have a problem like that in the future, just delete your shapes and reduplicate them, because it's a lot faster. Now, of course, I just need to go and rename those shapes. Now we have all the shapes we need for the timeline. Maybe just we need to number the circles so we can have a visual reference later. You can put inside the circles whatever you want. You don't have even to put circles. You can put rounded rectangles if you want to add a year and the circle is small and doesn't fit the whole year. So you can change the shapes if you want, of course, it's up to you. Now for the animation, we will see that we will need to create more shapes. Actually, we'll need to duplicate some of the shapes and change the way they look. Now in the animation, what we want to do is we want to click on start. And when we click on start, we will have this blue line growing from start to 1 and now covering all of number 1. And when we click on 1, it will grow from number 1 to number 2, and it will fill number 2 as well, all the way to the finish line. But the idea is we can do just the opposite. We can cover the whole line and all of the numbers with other duplicates of a gray number, just like that. And when we want to move from one to the next, we simply remove the gray and it will look like the blue line is filling. Now what we need to do is to go to the selection pane, select the connector line and duplicate it. We want to make the second version of the connector gray and with no outlines. And now all we need to do is just to put it on top of the blue one, just like that. And now we need to do the same with the numbers. But just to be able to differentiate between the connector lines, we know that this connector line is gray and this connector line is blue. So we want to make sure to name them correctly so that we can identify them later. If you want to make sure this is the gray line, so just try and hide it to see if it is the one, and it is in this case. So what we need now is to go to and select all the numbers and duplicate them. We know that these are going to be the gray numbers, so I'm going to call them G, and I'm going to call the ones below B. And trust me, this is not just because I'm obsessed with organization. This is a big help in the animation, and you will see just in a minute. I guess I left some shape outline on them, so we need to get rid of the shape outline. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to take those shapes, we want to take those gray shapes. First of all, let's change the fill color to gray and change the text to black. Now what we want to do is we want to put these shapes on top of the other shapes. While we're selecting all of them, we can just go and make sure we're right on top. Now if you zoom into this, you will see that we're not exactly there. So we can just go a little bit to the left or to the right. We can use the arrow keys. Number 2, number 1 is good. Number 2, 3, 4, and 5. They're all good. Now we can go back. I guess we need to make the numbers also a little bit bigger. We'll choose all of them just to have the same. Maybe we can go for 24, maybe 28. Make them bold. Now we see if we just look at the other number as well, we have the other numbers formatted the same way. So now we're done with creating our line, the line that we're going to remove to reveal the blue line beneath. The same is going to happen with those numbers. We have gray numbers. We're going to add exit animations 4 to make way for the blue beneath, just to give this effect that the blue line is filling actually the timeline. How do we achieve this? We want the gray line to disappear, but we don't want it to disappear all at once. Now, let's just try to see what we can do about it. Let's choose the connector line, the gray one, and try to go to, I'll close this format shape, and I'll go and open the animation pane instead. Now I will add maybe fly out animation, and let's take it to the right. I'll make this a little bit longer so that you can see the effect itself. Now you see how it's going to be. It's going to be like the blue line is filling the bar, but unfortunately, we can't do this in different steps. We don't have a real timeline in PowerPoint to be able to control keyframes. Actually, what we need as the final preparation before we just go on and add our animations is to cut this gray line into different parts, and then we can make each of those parts disappear whenever we need them to disappear. So that means we need to make the cuts, we need to make our cuts just beneath the numbers. So let's do that. And to be honest, there is one other use for the selection pane. Now, when you want to work on something and it's getting cluttered and you have a lot of things on the screen, so just simply go and hide the things you don't need for now. For the moment, I just need the connector line and I need a set of numbers. I don't need everything else. So I'm going to just hide the texts, hide start and finish maybe. Now we know that we need to make cuts just where the numbers are, so we can do it in two different ways. We can create smaller lines, a line that goes from start to 1, from 1 to 2, etc. Or since we already have this line, we can just cut this line in the way we want. And to cut this line, you just go to the Insert tab, go to Shapes, pick a shape that is going to be a line, just like that. You don't have to be precise, you just add the cut where you want it to be. And I'm going to add a second one here, a third one here, Fourth cut here, and the last cut is going to be here. And now we can hide the rest. And I'll make sure I select all the shapes. We can see in the selection pane that we have selected the 5 rectangle shapes we created, and we selected the connector line G, which is the gray line, and that's exactly what we want. And now we will go to the Format tab, Merge Shapes, and we will choose Fragment. As you can see, when we fragment, the colors changed into the blue, and that is because somehow the blue shapes were chosen first. So to change that, I'll just undo the changes, and now I'm going to choose the gray line first, then I'm going to choose the other rectangles. And now when we go to the Format tab, Merge Fragment, we can see now the color stays as gray. Now what we have a lot of shapes here, and that's what happens when we fragment shapes. This makes different shapes at every point of contact, at every intersection. So we have a shape for this, we have a shape, we even have a small shape in the intersection between the lines. What we want to do now is we want to delete all these shapes. We now have the shapes we want. Just click on them in the selection pane and name them. This line is going to be from start to number 1. This line is going to be from 1 to 2. This line is going to connect from 2 to 3. This line is 3 to 4. This line is going to connect 4 to 5. And the last one is going to connect 5 to finish. And now I can say that we have everything we need to start adding our animations. Now we'll show all the objects back on the slide, and we'll start animating. Now we can see that the start and finish happen to be under the line, and this is not exactly what we want. We want to move them above the line. And we can see that there is this excess right here. Now notice that when you want to change the size of something that is a little bit thin, it might be a little bit difficult to control it. You can always make it easier by zooming in. And we can do the same for the blue line, and that's it. So now we're ready to go. What we need to do is we need to make start the trigger of the first animation, one the trigger of the second, etc. But what we need to do is we need to have all the gray numbers disappear. So we will select all the gray numbers and we will make those disappear. And in the add animations, I'm going to add an animation, and the best way to go here is to wipe them. You can try other animations, but if we want to achieve this effect that the blue line is filling in, so we need to wipe the gray. And obviously we don't need to wipe them from the bottom up, we need to wipe them from left. We also need to do the same thing for those little gray lines that we added, the gray connectors. So I'm going to choose all of them and add the same animation. And we're going to choose the same direction from the left. And one more thing we need to do is to show the text bubbles. And we need to link that to our animation as well. So I'm going to go to the text bubbles, text 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I want to fade them in. So I'm choosing an entrance fade. Now we have all the animations we need. What we need to do actually is just to add triggers to them. What happens when we click on start? When we click on start, we want this part to disappear, to wipe to the right. And then we want number 1 in gray to wipe to the right. And we want the text to appear. And we want them to happen in the same order. That is number 1 in gray. And that is start to number 1. And that is text 1. We want these to be triggered by the click of start. We don't want them to happen in this order, of course. We want the link to disappear first. We want the gray number to disappear next. And we want the text to appear afterwards. But we actually don't want it to happen in just all at once. We want to click the 3 of them and change on click to after previous. So we want them to happen one after the other when we click on start. Now let's check this thing out to see how it's going to look, I'm going to preview the slide from here. Don't worry about the rest of them, that they're all happening at the same time, because simply we haven't added the trigger to them yet. But let's try our first trigger. When we click on start, the line goes away, the number goes away, and then we have our title. So this is exactly the order that we need, and it's looking good. Let's do the others. Now for the others, we will go to this number 2, 1 to 2, and text 2, and trigger that by the click of number 1, blue. Remember, because one gray is gone, you want the click to be one blue, not one gray, and that is 1B. Maybe now you could appreciate the importance of naming everything in the selection pane. Now when we just go and choose the things we want to animate, and when we want to choose triggers, it's very easy to identify our triggers. Otherwise, it would be very difficult. Going from 3 to 4, I want to click on 3 blue. So it is 3B. It's very simple. And now going to from 4 to 5 and showing the text 5, we want to click on 4, which is 4B. And the last one, we want it to disappear when we click on 5 and actually we go to finish. We can trigger that as well with 5B. Maybe we should add the same effect for finish. So we can duplicate finish. And this is going to be finish gray. And this is going to be finish blue. And now if we choose finish gray and blue and we just align them to the top and left. And now take the gray, change the fill color and the text fill as well. Now we can take the gray and go to animations. We'll add this wipe as well. That's gonna wipe from the left. And we're gonna add this last wipe to our last animation. Now remember to put all of these animations to start after previous, because you want them to start in order, and make sure the order is correct. You want to make sure that the connector goes off first, the number goes off next, and the last thing is the text to appear. And let's do this. This is exactly what we want. So now let's test it out. We click on start. It goes the same way we want, but look at the problem we have here. We have the blue numbers are sitting beneath the gray connector, so we can fix that right away. We can take all our blue numbers and put them on top of the gray connectors. And now we can just go and test again. That's good. We click on 1, it goes to 2, it shows the text. It goes to 3, it shows the text. It goes to 4, shows the text. Same here. And this is it. Our first timeline is done. I hope you liked the concepts you learned here today and the timeline itself and how to animate the timeline. And remember, you can use this timeline to describe a process, or to use it for an actual timeline, change it for years or months or whatever you like. And remember, the concepts we learned here are going to help us a lot in other projects and in the next timelines we're going to talk about in the next videos. So stick around with me. There's more to learn about timelines. I'll see you in the next video.